The stars were quiet, too quiet. After 2 centuries of steady expansion, humanity finally encountered a galactic community that was neither waiting to welcome them nor interested in conquering them. The conquered of Anars had long ago calculated peace down to an exact science, a harmony so mathematically pure that every member race accepted its tenets without question. A civilization's worth was measured in strict adherence to the conquered's codes of non-aggression, social optimization, and collective good. Harmony was statistical, deviance was corrected, warfare was a relic filed away in historical vaults. When Earth's first envoys arrived in the Nemian system, they were regarded less as ambassadors and more as variables, unknown quantities in an equation already solved. Humans offered passion, ambition, innovation, but the conquered saw only noise, chaos, risk. They smiled at humanity's hopes for partnership and quietly placed them on probation, assigning Earth a status known as observationally quarantined integration. It was a mercy in their minds, a chance for humans to catch up without breaking the fragile peace that stretched across 100,000 worlds. But humans did not understand mercy as the conquered defined it. And the bleeding began. The first casualties were unseen. Earth's access to interstellar markets was severely restricted. Vital technologies remained locked behind walls of policy. Colonial fleets stalled, stranded with half-finished hulls in dry docks orbiting Jupiter and Mars. Earth's own trade goods, music, literature, philosophy, innovation were classified as culturally hazardous and subjected to endless review cycles by conquered agencies that took decades to render judgment. A year into the probation, the riots began on Europa and Titan. Resource shortages, bottlenecked trade, political anger. Humanity, born from conflict, adapted by necessity, and innovated from desperation, found itself strangled by the sterile velvet grip of galactic peace. On Europa, General Lysa Rain stood before the wreckage of the Europa Trade Hall, still burning from riots. "They don't fear our violence," she said bitterly to her Chief of Staff, Colonel Vance. "They fear our unpredictability, our capacity to change the system just by existing." Colonel Vance shook his head, "And they think patience will domesticate us, like taming a storm by putting it in a box." The conquered dispatched mediators to Earth and its colonies, silver-skinned envoys with neural dampeners that radiated calm and reason. They spoke of understanding, adaptation, integration. They carried with them the statistical models that predicted humanity would assimilate peacefully within 3 generations if sufficient psychological pressure was applied. But humans did not fit the models, not completely. On Mars, a failed mediation led to the first death. An envoy, overwhelmed by a sudden act of defiance, activated his emergency nullifier, an energy field meant to pacify, but the overloaded system killed a dozen protesters instead. It was labeled an accident. The envoy was recalled. The families of the dead did not accept statistical forgiveness. From that moment, the simmering resentment across Earth's colonies began to harden into something sharper, something colder. A war could not be declared. Such an act would bring annihilation under conquered law, but humans were not aiming for war. They began, quietly and without fanfare, to bleed for their freedom in smaller ways. Young scientists worked in sealed labs beneath the Atlantic, creating technology that would never be authorized by the conquered. Military officers drilled troops in zero-gravity combat on rogue asteroids beyond Pluto's orbit. Philosophers resurrected forbidden doctrines of sovereignty and resistance, broadcasting encrypted manifestos through dark channels of the galactic net. Earth was becoming dangerous, the conquered noticed. Still, the mathematicians at the heart of their society assured them the probability curve remained in their favor. Humans would break themselves trying to fight the inevitability of peace. They underestimated the cost humans were willing to pay. In the 3rd year of probation, humanity made its first deliberate strike, not with weapons but with an idea. At the Interstellar Cultural Forum on Vitrax Prime, human delegates unveiled a piece of music titled the Bled Canticle, composed not with instruments but with the recorded heartbeats of those who had died under conquered mediations. It was raw, terrible, beautiful. It moved even the genetically calibrated pacifists of the Elan Shard to tears. The conquered's models faltered. Statistical analysis could not account for such targeted emotional assault. New variables were introduced: human grief, human rage, human persistence. Policy revisions were proposed. Debate flared across the conquered's ruling assemblies. Some races argued that Earth should be forcefully repressed before their chaos infected the peace. Others argued that humanity's passion could enrich the conquered if properly channeled. A few radicals suggested that maybe the conquered's vision of peace itself needed re-examination. For the first time in 10 millennia, the conquered's unity cracked, Not visibly, not officially, but beneath the polished speeches and unified declarations, factions emerged. Humanity had achieved its first victory, not by breaking the law, but by making the cost of enforcing it heavier than predicted. And still, Earth bled. On Ceres, a diplomatic mission was sabotaged by a rogue human cell known only as the Fracture. They hijacked a conquered peacekeeper's vessel, broadcast a manifesto in hundreds of languages declaring humanity's right to self-determination, and detonated the ship above a conquered embassy, killing no one but themselves. A loss statistically minor, emotionally devastating. General Rains, watching the footage from her command bunker, said only, "We are reshaping the battlefield." The conquered tightened its restrictions. Earth's probation was extended indefinitely, trade sanctions deepened, cultural dissemination was banned entirely. Attempts to visit other conquered worlds without explicit authorization were now punishable by genetic arrest, a process that stripped neural patterns down to docile compliance. The prison fleets grew full of young humans who had dared to dream outside conquered-proved parameters. Still, humanity adapted. Still, humanity bled. And somewhere deep in the Uit cloud, a signal pulsed in the dark, a new network growing beyond conquered surveillance, a place where human ingenuity and resilience conspired in secret. A whisper passed between the stars, growing louder with each passing month. They calculated peace. We are calculating something else, the signal grew. What began as a whisper became a network of thought, trade, and rebellion stretching across the hidden corners of humanity's farthest outposts. They called it the Red Verge. No grand banners, no capital world, just encrypted links between mines, laboratories, shipyards, and refugee colonies scattered like embers in the void. The Conquered's intelligence divisions tried to infiltrate, to map and isolate the network. Their agents, optimized for predictability and stability, failed again and again. Every time they closed one node, 3 more would appear. Humans did not resist in straight lines. They adapted like a viral code, mutating faster than algorithms could catch. And in the crucible of isolation, Earth evolved. 15 years into their probation, Earth's engineers unveiled the first prototype of the Vindicator-class corvette. Built in secret using repurposed mining vessels and outlawed quantum fields, the Vindicator was nothing the Conquered had ever seen. Asymmetrical hulls that shifted under fire, AI systems not to control the ship, but to fight it, to anticipate enemy targeting matrices and twist human error into an advantage. In a hidden dry dock orbiting Gliese 163c, Admiral Noah Vance watched the Vindicator's trial run against a Conquered training drone. The human vessel danced and spasmed across space like a wounded animal, erratic and wild, yet every movement bent physics to its will. The drone, perfectly optimized for balance and precision, failed to track it. In 36 seconds, the Vindicator tore the drone apart. Admiral Vance smiled grimly. "They think chaos is a flaw, we made it a weapon." Meanwhile, Earth's thinkers fought battles not of steel, but of thought. A mathematician named Dr. Sale Harrow published the Black Equations, an unauthorized set of statistical models proving that the Conquered's peace, while sustainable in short epochs, inevitably led to systemic collapse after 20,000 years. It was a death by perfection, no innovation, no deviation, no resilience against truly random existential threats. The Black Equations spread like wildfire through restricted knowledge circuits. Among the younger Conquered races, species who had never known anything but the ordered serenity of the Anar's codes, an unsettling new philosophy took root. The humans had a word for it: entropy. The idea that disorder was not an enemy, but a source of rebirth. Some alien scholars began to secretly contact human cells through the Red Verge, asking questions they dared not ask publicly. A new coalition, unnamed and hidden, began to form, not human, not Conquered, but something in between. The bleeding never stopped. On Earth, cities turned inward. Urban centers once vibrant with international exchange became isolated fortresses of self-reliance. The Pacific Rim Alliance constructed orbital shields over their metropolises, defying Conquered warnings about unauthorized military technology. Brazil launched the Ardent Initiative, a decentralized fleet of stealth vessels meant to safeguard vital resources from Conquered interception. Every violation was met with punishment, every punishment fed the fire. In the orbital gardens of the Conquered's High Assembly, the Primarch of the Even race stood before a gathering of elder envoys and laid down a declaration: humanity must be neutralized for the greater good. Not eradicated, genocide was unthinkable, but biologically harmonized, their genomes edited to erase the impulses toward chaos and violence. The resolution passed by a narrow margin. The operation was given a name, Silent Verdict. When Silent Verdict began, it moved quietly. Seeds of genetically targeted nanoviruses were released into Terran trade shipments, clean water, medical supplies, agricultural seeds, designed to be slow, invisible, irreversible. The Red Verge uncovered the plot in time. On the ice moon of Enceladus, a scientist named Mara Chen and her team of rogue virologists captured a conquered freighter carrying a viral seed shipment. Working around the clock in makeshift biolabs carved into frozen cliffs, they reverse-engineered the virus. They devised countermeasures, vaccines, and more dangerously, a weaponized form of the virus that could infect conquered populations with unpredictable mutations. Mara refused to release the bioweapon. She sent it instead as a gift to Conquered Command, a demonstration of restraint. Her message was simple. We will not become monsters, but we will not remain your cattle. For the first time, the Conquered leadership realized the humans had crossed a threshold no projections had anticipated. They were not just resisting. They were defining a new model of survival under pressure, a model that other races might soon emulate. Cracks widened across the galaxy. On the fringe worlds of the Conquered, minor races began to push back against regulations. On Orsil V, the Adrani burned their compliance centers and declared themselves autonomous. On Keshad Prime, the Saurian dismantled Conquered monitoring stations and publicly thanked humanity for teaching them the meaning of defiance. Tiny acts statistically insignificant but growing. Within the Red Verge, Admiral Vance convened a secret war council, leaders from Earth's underground states, exiled scientists, rogue diplomats, and even a few alien sympathizers. We have bled enough, he said, standing beneath a tattered banner of old Earth. It is time to make them bleed, not with hate, not with vengeance, but with understanding so sharp it cuts through their certainty. They will learn that peace cannot be calculated, it must be fought for, and it must be earned. Plans were drawn. Ships were armed. Minds were prepared for war that would not be called war. Across the stars, humanity moved in shadows, preparing for an upheaval that would not be won in a single battle or even 1,000. They were crafting something far more dangerous than rebellion. They were crafting the end of inevitability itself. The spark became a blaze. It began with the silence of Talvak, a conquered frontier outpost that ceased all transmissions overnight. When investigative drones arrived, they found the station empty, abandoned, its databank scrubbed clean. No bodies, no wreckage, no trace of conflict. Only a single message carved into the central hall's alloy walls. Peace is not the absence of struggle, it is the forging of will. No human forces were found nearby, no open claim of responsibility. But everyone in the Conquered High Assembly knew who had taught this lesson. While the official Conquered channels fumbled for explanations, a cascade of hidden rebellions ignited across the outer sectors. Supply routes were sabotaged. Cultural centers, once the hearts of indoctrination, were quietly dismantled from within. Even high-ranking Conquered officials began resigning in quiet shame, citing irreconcilable philosophical conflicts as their reason. The Red Verge no longer had to act directly. Its mere existence distorted the gravitational field of galactic politics. In the depths of the Veiled Belt, a sprawling cluster of asteroids rich in forbidden technologies, humanity's new armada was born. No longer the rough prototypes of desperation, these vessels were masterpieces of brutal design. The Nomad Dreadnought, with segmented armor that could shed and regenerate mid-battle. The Aegis-class Interceptor, built for rapid distortion field jumps that left Conquered tracking systems blind. The Leviathan carriers, city-sized and armored with layers of adaptive alloys harvested from dead Conquered fleets. Each ship was crewed not only by humans, but by volunteers from species once loyal to the Concord, Adrani, Saurian Vite, who saw in humanity not chaos but a path forward beyond sterile conformity. On Earth, amidst the broken towers of New Santiago, Chancellor Mara Ellen spoke to the assembled delegates of the newly declared Free Terran Alliance. We do not seek the destruction of the Conquered, she said, voice carried through every hacked broadcast node in occupied space. We seek its transformation. They would have us believe peace is a still pond, unmoving and perfect. We know better. True peace is a river, wild, changing, dangerous, alive. Her words were banned instantly across all Conquered channels. But they spread anyway, through the dark lines of the Red Verge. The Conquered responded with escalation. Task Force Zenith, composed of the finest peacekeeper fleets, launched a campaign of surgical strikes against suspected human-aligned outposts. Entire settlements on Luna's far side, on Callisto's under-ice cities, on the floating metropoles of Saturn's cloud layers were erased in seconds. The official reports called them containment actions. The Red Verge called them massacres. For every colony burned, 3 more vowed resistance. For every atrocity buried in bureaucratic language, human operatives carved reminders into the galaxy's collective memory with blood and flame. At the Battle of Direct's Divide, humanity revealed the scale of its transformation. Conquered forces arrived expecting to dismantle a minor Red Verge operation. Instead, they found an armada. Tens of thousands of ships rose from the Divide's dust clouds, moving not in neat formations but in layered, chaotic stratagems designed to overwhelm predictive algorithms. Torpedo storms bent by gravitational distortions. Suicide drones seeded with quantum warheads. Stealth cutters surgically severing the command spines of conquered capital ships. It was not conquest, it was message. In 37 hours, the Conquered's 12th and 16th fleets ceased to exist. Human losses were catastrophic, but acceptable to the logic humanity had embraced. Victory was not measured in survival, but in the shattering of inevitability. After Direct's Divide, the Conquered's philosophers met in secret chambers to ask questions they had not dared speak aloud for millennia. What if humanity's chaos was not an aberration but a necessity? What if stagnation, not conflict, was the true enemy? But old inertia dies hard. In desperation, the Conquered activated Protocol Finales, a project conceived in the deep past and buried for fear of its implications. Protocol Finales would forcibly integrate humanity by rewriting the very structure of their sentience, using a lattice of quantum neural broadcasters seeded into the subspace corridors that humanity now relied on for communication and navigation. If successful, humanity would not be destroyed, they would simply forget. Forget rebellion. Forget defiance. Forget struggle. The activation process would take time, weeks, maybe months, but it was already underway. Humanity had no choice but to escalate once more. Admiral Vance, battered and graying but unbroken, convened the leaders of the Red Verge at the bridge of the Leviathan Resolute Dawn. "Our war is not for territory," he said. "It is not for revenge, it is for the right to be flawed, to be dangerous, to be alive." He raised his hand, and 1,000 ships prepared for what would be their most impossible campaign yet. A campaign not to destroy an empire but to awaken it. In hidden laboratories on the Forge moon of Ithra, human scientists and alien defectors built the answer to Protocol Finales. Not another weapon. A virus of thought. A pulse of raw human memory, rage, love, hope, sorrow, coded into quantum resonance, designed to infect the very broadcast lattice the Conquered had intended to enslave them with. A single burst unleashed into the Conquered's deepest information veins would carry humanity's soul like wildfire through their oppressors' perfect minds. Not an attack. An inoculation. The architects of this final gambit knew the risks. They knew many would die before it succeeded. They knew it could shatter minds, devastate networks, unleash chaos far beyond human control. But they had bled too much to stop now. And somewhere in the endless night of space, a single ship prepared to deliver the payload that could rewrite the fate of the galaxy. The last argument, named after an old Terran saying etched onto its battered hull. The last argument of kings. As it burned through the void toward the heart of conquered territory, humanity, scarred, furious, brilliant, prepared to end the old peace and forge a new one in the only way they ever could. Through blood. Through will. Through the impossible, the last argument streaked through interstellar darkness, silent as a thought, deadly as a verdict. On board, Commander Elias Roque, once a philosopher, now a weapon, stood at the core of the payload chamber. His heartbeat synced with the pulse device, a fusion of stolen, conquered resonance algorithms and raw human emotion encoded into chaos wave harmonics. Outside the ship, a conquered interdiction fleet waited in formation, a shimmering wall of silver and pale blue, blocking the approach to the neural nexus. Protocol Finales was nearly complete. The first human settlements had already begun to report strange behavioral shifts, forgetfulness, compliance, the quiet death of resistance. The last argument had to succeed. Commander Roke opened a channel to the Red Verge fleet surging behind him. "This is not a call to arms," he said. "This is a call to memory. Remember who we are, remember why we fight. If we fall, make our fall so deafening the stars themselves cannot forget." No reply was needed. The fleet surged forward. The conquered interdiction fleet responded with perfect coordination. Their ships moved as a single mind, a seamless network of predictive algorithms and calculated countermeasures. They fired in synchronized volleys designed not to destroy, but to incapacitate. Concord did not seek death, they sought sterilization. But the Red Verge ships did not behave according to any model. They fractured formation intentionally, weaving in tangled, unpredictable paths, sacrificing themselves to open gaps, igniting fusion cores as decoys, transmitting false target signatures. The battle became a storm of broken equations. In the chaos, the last argument slipped through. Commander Roke piloted manually now, hands bleeding where the interface graphs tore into his skin. Ahead, the neural nexus loomed, a vast, floating cathedral of light and computation, cradling the lattice of thought that bound the Concord's mindscape together. As the first Concord defense nodes opened fire, Roke activated the payload. The device did not detonate like a weapon. It blossomed. A pulse of resonant chaos encoded with the raw tapestry of human existence burst forth in an expanding wave. It did not destroy the nexus, it infected it. Across the Concord, across 1,000 worlds and countless stations, minds calibrated for predictability spasmed under the impact of alien feeling. An Elan diplomat on Eris, V dropped her ceremonial scripts and screamed into the sky. A Vede historian on Kylo's prime tore down the sacred records of unbroken peace and wept at their emptiness. A council elder on the capital world of Saren Prime shattered his neural interface and simply walked into the ocean. Not all broke. Some adapted. For the first time, conquered citizens felt the terror, wonder, anger, longing, and relentless hunger for meaning that defined the human spirit. For the first time, peace was not an equation but a question. The battle in orbit was not over. Conquered Command, still struggling to interpret what had happened, ordered a full assault on the Red Verge fleet. No quarter, no negotiations, annihilation. In the burning wreckage fields, Admiral Vance gave his final orders. Hold them, buy time, make them bleed with doubt. The Red Verge fleet fought like a cornered storm. Nomad dreadnoughts locked themselves into conquered formations, detonating fusion cores at point-blank range. Aegis interceptors dove straight into conquered command hubs, spraying entropic code viruses that melted targeting arrays. Leviathan carriers unleashed squadrons of human and alien fighters screaming defiance into the void. They fought not to win. They fought to finish the transmission. On Earth, the first tremors of change began to shake the old order. In the domed halls of the Pacific Rim Alliance, Chancellor Ellen received a transmission from an unexpected source, High Mediator Kale Sark of the Conquered Council, requesting emergency talks. Not a demand, not a summons. A request. Across the colonies, conquered garrisons began to hesitate, standing down without orders, refusing to fire on civilians. Small acts, isolated acts, but the Concord's great engine of inevitability was grinding to a halt, one cracked gear at a time. In the final moments above the neural nexus, the Red Verge fleet was shattered. Only fragments remained. Admiral Vance's flagship, the Resolute Dawn, burned from bow to stern. He stood on the bridge, staring at the holofeed showing the nexus flickering and shifting as human thought rewrote its algorithms in real time. He whispered to himself, "We were never meant to fit into their peace." The Resolute Dawn rammed into the enemy flagship, shattering both vessels into an expanding sphere of debris. And far below, on the newly awakened worlds of the Conquered, the first riots for freedom began. Not human riots. Conquered-born. New songs rose in alien tongues, angry, sorrowful, hopeful. New movements spread across the once placid worlds, movements that spoke not of rebellion but of evolution. Commander Roke, somehow alive amidst the drifting wreckage of the last argument, opened his eyes to a starscape forever changed. Humanity had bled for this moment, and the galaxy had begun to bleed with them. But it was not the end. It was the breaking of the old peace. The forging of something harder, fiercer, truer. A peace that meant something because it had been fought for. Because it had been earned. The old order crumbled not with a singular cataclysm, but with the relentless erosion of certainty. In the wake of the neural nexus's infection, the conquered faltered in ways no model had predicted. Governance systems that once processed decisions with machine efficiency collapsed under the sudden weight of conflicting desires, ambitions, griefs, and dreams newly born among their citizens. Worlds that had never known dissent now debated furiously in their planetary forums. Sectors long obedient raised banners no conquered historian had names for emblems of freedom, autonomy, dangerous hope. From the shining towers of Sarin Prime to the deep colony arcs of the Kellen Verge, thought itself had broken its chains. Earth did not emerge unscathed. The Red Verge was all but gone, its leaders martyred, its fleets reduced to drifting carcasses glinting in the void. Entire generations of humans were missing, lost in battle, disappeared into conquered prisons, or simply sacrificed in secret wars that had no names. And yet humanity stood. A new council rose on Earth, forged not by governments but by the survivors of the Bled. Scientists, soldiers, farmers, artists, voices from every broken colony, every shattered ship, every hidden lab. At their first convocation in the ruins of Geneva, Chancellor Ellen spoke once more, this time without the desperate fire of war, but with the heavy gravity of hard-won wisdom. We fought because we had no choice, we bled because they left us no other language, but now we must speak in a new tongue, not conquest, not domination, creation. Across the recovering conquered, calls went out to humanity, not as subjects to be repressed, but as partners to be consulted. Envoys bearing old banners of peace approached Earth's embassies with no demands, only questions. How had humanity survived? How had they adapted when all statistics said they should collapse? The answer was no secret. Humanity embraced uncertainty. They did not fear imperfection. They did not bow to inevitability. In time, Earth helped draft the new Galactic Accord, a fragile, shifting, dynamic framework not built on predictive certainty, but on negotiated understanding. A peace that could flex, crack, and rebuild itself endlessly without becoming brittle. It was not clean. It was not perfect. It was real. On the far edges of space, a statue was erected on a barren moon scarred by forgotten battles. It showed no general, no politician, no hero. Only a simple figure standing tall, bleeding from countless wounds, hands outstretched not in violence but in offering. At its base, carved in 100 languages, were the words, "True peace is born not when the strong silence the weak, but when the broken rise and teach the stars to bleed with purpose." Commander Elias Roque lived to see it once, before vanishing into the outer dark. Admiral Vance's name became legend among both humans and the free peoples of the conquered. The blood of the fallen remained in the soil of distant worlds, their stories sung in new anthems not of sorrow, but of defiant joy. The galaxy turned forward, uncertain but unafraid. Earth, once quarantined, once dismissed as a primitive anomaly, now sat not above others but among them, a catalyst for endless transformation. And somewhere beyond the mapped stars, the descendants of humanity looked outward again, not to conquer, not to submit, but to dare. To dream. To bleed again if they must. Because now their pain had meaning. Because now peace was not a calculation. It was a living thing. And it had been forged in the fires of their will.